Even Jesus wasn't one-sided. There's a whole lot of text on there that doesn't show him that one-sided state.
He was neither good nor bad.
He was neither.
Aubrey Marcus has put out an invitation to critique a powerful and provocative podcast that he has had with Dr. Demartini that has recently gone out and spread waves across the community. I want to discuss what was happening beneath the surface of this conversation. That is my entire focus for this breakdown of what was happening, because if those underlying dynamics are seen clearly, this interaction has the potential to create integration and learning and deeper respect and healing for all of those who watch or are impacted by a lot of the themes that were brought up during this podcast. So for me, this is not about grading a winner. It's about seeing ourselves in this conversation. I also want to say all of what I'm about to point out is easy to say in hindsight when you're not in the heat of the moment. I have seen my own reflection in everything that was witnessed as a part of this interview. And again, I just deeply appreciate this opportunity. So to get some perspective, this is Dr. Demartini's worldview that sets up the stage for this entire conversation.
Beyond the outer appearance, there's nothing but love, all else is illusion. And that the quality of your life is based on the quality of the questions you ask. And the questions make you conscious of what you've been unconscious of, so you can, if asking wise questions, become fully conscious of this love.
That what happens when somebody, through their own agency, interferes with your own projection of what you're actually experiencing in your life, like some predation of some sort.
Whatever I perceive in others is me. So if I perceive somebody that's a predator, they're there to make me realize that they're representing a part of me that I haven't owned and loved and appreciated. And they're giving me a chance now to go and do that.
I have a really hard time with this, honestly, because if I went home today and somebody was assaulting my wife, I would forcibly stop it.
Probably.
Because
you
would
would value,
probably 100%,
well,
certainly. I wouldn't say, maybe this is his belief and this is my belief.
You're going to react in that setting exactly proportioned to your morality at the time.
So as you can see there, Dr. Demartini, I'll refer to John, has shared his worldview. And Aubrey's saying, honestly, I have a really hard time with this. Aubrey, I want to ask you directly, and I really hope that you take this opportunity to be genuine about the question I'm about to ask. Did you truly believe that that man, John, sitting in front of you, would hesitate to defend his wife if she was being attacked? That he would stand there philosophizing about what is right and wrong right there as harm was occurring as you were describing? Is that honestly what you felt? Be very interested in that answer from you. Because if the answer is yes, then this isn't simply a philosophical disagreement that's going on. It becomes more a question of John's character. That really shifts the tone of the conversation. But if your answer is no, I don't doubt that he would take action. I don't doubt that he'd protect his wife, even after hearing his worldview. Then I'm wondering, what was the point of the whole conversation? What was the point of the debate that ensued after that? I'm really interested to know that bit, and I think the viewers might be as well. Now, John, what stopped you from asking to Aubrey directly right there, right at this moment? Because this is at the start of the whole podcast. It's setting up the vibration and energetic of the entire conversation. Aubrey, are you concerned that my worldview means I wouldn't protect my wife if she was being harmed? Or are you worried that my rejection of moral language implies indifference in the face of suffering? Now, these questions would have surfaced what was actually happening in that moment, because without that clarity, something really subtle is starting to form between them. One person feels their integrity is being questioned, and the other person feels their general basic sense of moral intuition isn't being affirmed, and that's starting to create tension. And I'm not saying hostility, but tension. And when that tension remains unspoken, so no direct questions to really just wait, where I don't know if we're on the same page, let's really clearly get there. which those questions, I believe, would have instantly taken the conversation to, over time, it slowly turns into mistrust. And from my observations, this moment wasn't really about moral relativism or good or evil. It was about whether each man felt seen, heard, and respected right here in the beginning. And once that respect feels a bit wobbly and unstable, the topic, everything that's spoken about from that point, becomes secondary. So the debate subtly shifts from, does evil exist? Is good and right and wrong and all of that necessary? To, wait up, can I even trust this person that's in front of me?
So you don't believe in any universal ethics, any universal values where like child abuse is always bad?
Don't know, because what is child abuse? That's the thing. We would call child abuse here in America
Having sex with a 5-year-old.
Well,
if I saw somebody beating a child to a pulp, I would react.
yes.
Yeah, I would.
But I know
And you would, and would you walk away?
I know a gentleman right now who's in Australia, in Brisbane, Australia, who was beaten as a child, and right now he's one of the biggest educators in Australia.
But does that not mean I shouldn't stop what was happening?
You are going to, if you have a perception that
But
it's
I'm saying
evil, you're going to try to protect the child.
But should I not? You're saying that there's no ought.
I'm not putting moral shoulds on there. That's some authority that you've given power to that's outside you.
Now, in this moment, John appears to be cornered into affirming a moral stance that doesn't fit his framework. It doesn't fit his worldview. He's made that really clear, right? So a cleaner question might have been, John, in your worldview, which doesn't rely upon defining things as good or evil, we've got that established, do you condone child abuse? Now, you may have noticed I used the word condone, and you might be thinking, well, what's the difference between condoning something or not condoning something and calling something bad or wrong? And the difference is so significant, right? Labeling something as wrong is a moral judgment based on a belief system. And that belief system can get attributed to yourself personally. Things become personal when it comes to right and wrong. Not condoning something is a functional rejection based on the damage it causes, right? You don't have to call something like child abuse evil to refuse to allow it simply by recognizing what it does to the human nervous system and the damage it causes. All of this is self-evident by universal laws. Universal laws are persistent. Ideas of right and wrong constantly change. Many things we once thought were to be wrong now have no relevance to us based on our belief systems that have changed. Causality is much more stable and certainly far more empowering, particularly when it comes to healing. So this is a critical point. Now, I can understand, Aubrey, why you didn't directly ask that question, because I guess it would have made the whole conversation a bit absurd. Now, let's assume John just said no. Of course not. My whole life's work is devoted to reducing destructive behavior like child abuse. I don't require the belief in evil to respond to that. In fact, I've found that labeling events like this either increases or creates more of the same problem, what you resist persists, or it prevents the healing process. Then, of course, you could go into why that might be. But of course, that is what would happen when we have clarity. And this is when the real debate could emerge. Is belief in evil required in order to protect the innocent or the vulnerable or your wife or whatever the case may be? And there are many, many examples throughout this podcast. Because if John truly believed something like child abuse was justified, the conversation would have probably ended immediately or never began in the first place. But he doesn't. So the disagreement was never about whether harm should be stopped, although on the surface it looks like this. It was whether the belief in evil is required to stop it. And that distinction was never made explicit. And without that clarity, increasingly extreme examples were introduced to try to force alignment, which only deepened the rigidity, right, on both sides.
There's upsides to the murder of children?
Yes, there's upsides to it.
I think we're going to have to stop here, John.
Well, you're too black and white, I guess, for me to be able to share.
Okay, this is what I want to be really clear about here. In this moment, when the mic is pulled away by Aubrey, the debate has shifted from a sincere inquiry to a very firm boundary, right? That's not a judgment I'm making. It's just simply highlighting the dynamic that is now in play. The nervous system is now driving the interaction. And when that happens, the victim perpetrator rescuer cycle has now quietly entered the room. So from one angle, John appears like the perpetrator because he refuses to adopt moral language, essentially. And from the other angle, Aubrey steps into the rescuer role because he feels responsible to protect, moral clarity and perhaps the audience. And the audience feeling this tension, right? And these uncomfortable feelings often moves into the victim seat, right? And from there, they'll seek alignment through essentially a clearer moral stance, which is likely to be Aubrey in this case. Now, all of this is going on not because it's malicious, but because the survival mind dynamics have taken over. The victim perpetrator rescuer cycle, the roles that they play are starting to enter the conversation. So again, this was not about condoning child abuse, which it looks like from that clip. It was about whether John's refusal to use moral language meant that Aubrey could trust his instincts to protect, and that assumption was never fully clarified. Even though from Aubrey's perspective, I'm sure you would be feeling like I was doing everything I could to clarify that. But it was wedged against the idea that right and wrong and good and evil was necessary to do that. So aside from using the word condone, which was pivotal in finding level ground between them both, do you condone this and that? Not is this right or wrong? Is this good or bad? Is this evil? Do you condone? That was a bridge to harmony, right? There's another aspect to this that would have bridged this beautifully that simply wasn't named, and that is suffering. When harm is occurring, what we are responding to is suffering. Now, from my perspective, the instinct to alleviate suffering when we see it in our immediate situation or wherever it is, it doesn't require a metaphysical belief in evil. It doesn't require a moral stance in what's right and what's wrong. To me, that's a human response. From my perspective, both Aubrey and John are deeply committed to reducing suffering. Aubrey frames it as moral responsibility. John frames it as dissolving perception to free people from victimhood, right? To empower them that way. But the shared ground between them is suffering. And if that had been explicitly acknowledged, trust may have been established from the very beginning, and this debate may have softened back into a conversation.
So I'm not interested in the morality here. I'm interested in why do people do what they do? What is it that drives these behaviors? Because if you just make it black and white and you don't look deeper, you assume that that's bad and good, and you never get to understand why that's happening.
No, I don't assume it. I actually know it. I actually know it in my body. Like I think this is actually a common sense sacred axiom with if you see somebody abusing somebody innocently, that's wrong.
So here is the question I'd like to ask from this conversation. Do we need to label an event as good, bad, evil? Do we need those labels to take action, to protect? When someone is being harmed, do we need to consult a moral stance to intervene or to move? Does that impulse require the belief in evil? What I've noticed is the underlying fear in this debate, which has been going on for millennia, is if we let go of the absolute sense of what is right and wrong, we will stop protecting each other. We'll stop being kind to each other. Even though history suggests protection evolves as our understanding of suffering and harm evolves. So perhaps the real exploration is this. Is it possible to protect children without grounding that protection in the concept of evil? Is it possible to apply force to stop harm, right? Force could be ripping someone off someone or having to hit someone or whatever that may be. A natural response in the moment without having to create an enemy. Now, this is what happens, and this is important to all of us in our relationships, in our workplaces, in our families, like everywhere that these arguments and debates, happen. We stop listening to understand and we start listening to confirm our position or prove our mistrust. We stop asking questions to meet each other. We start asking questions to test the other person. And what you notice happens in the conversation now are the pauses, the natural pauses disappear. People are starting to talk over the top of each other.
Let me just give you a belief
If you
system.
saw that actually happen, you couldn't stand it. You would be vomiting.
No, I wouldn't vomit.
The audience feels it. It's really uncomfortable. And it's not necessarily because the topic itself is difficult. It's because the tension, without the repair of that trust and respect, feels really uncomfortable and dishonoring. And when we feel that discomfort, the easiest move is to take sides. It's not to see what is going on underneath. We tend to go into a mental place or into our amygdala, as was pointed out in this discussion, and work out which side to take. And you can see that all over the comments. Because this mistrust is contagious. And then it gets personal. I've seen the personal attacks that both of these men have experienced since having this interaction, which only deepens the very dynamic the conversation was attempting to transcend. I don't believe either John or Aubrey believes harm should be ignored, or believes abuse should be allowed, or has an indifferent perspective or position on suffering. The debate wasn't ever about should we or should we not protect life. It was about whether the belief in good and bad and evil is required to do so. I'll repeat that. It was about the belief if good or bad or evil or right or wrong is necessary to take action, necessary to stand up and do what's right in our hearts. So for me, it's important to point out where trust, where respect is established to be able to have these conversations in the moment, when we notice the tension, not to continue with the distraction, which is the subject at hand, but actually meet each other, level with each other. Really, wait. What are you really saying? I'm not here to defend this idea. Let's come back here where we're brothers, where we know in our hearts that we meet beyond concept. In this situation, that trust required for this conversation wasn't fully secured by those questions. And if we can see how quickly mistrust changes the tone of the conversation, then we don't have to get pulled into choosing a side. We can step out of these polarizing positions and we can repair that trust. And for me, that is the most important insight for this whole exchange. It affects every one of our relationships. I've seen this dynamic in myself 1,000 times. And so I honor and appreciate both of these men for being willing to post this up. I thank you for exposing it because it gives us all an opportunity to learn how to meet the real conversation beneath the distraction. That is where leadership lives, not in winning, but in staying present when this tension arises and choosing clarity over defense. So thank you again for giving me this opportunity to share. And I hope this is healing for anyone who watches.